Radeon at the top of the Eau Rouge sequence at Spa-Francorchamps has seen a lot of nasty accidents, with consequences including very serious injury and death over the last few years. And the very same kind of accident keeps happening again and again. So despite Eau Rouge being a big old school fan favourite and something genuinely unique and dramatic among racing circuits, particularly on the F1 calendar, should it finally be changed? And I think the answer is yes and no. Actually, the answer is a whole lot less controversial than the question appears. But before we get all into it and start riling everyone up, I'd just like to thank NordVPN for sponsoring this video. You know, there's a lot of racing across many series crammed into the back half of this year, and people tweet me a lot saying, how do I watch it? And, you know, they live all over the world, so the answer gets complicated. But what makes it less complicated is having a solid VPN to virtually position your computer or phone across any of its 5,500 servers in 60 countries, so you can watch your favourite sports on your favourite broadcaster, no matter where you are. Or, you know, your favourite TV shows and movies. If you're subscribed to US Netflix, for example, they have a lot of different shows available in their catalogue from where I am in the UK. And NordVPN is safe with CyberSec Suite, careful how you say that, and double data encryption. Now, you lucky Chainbear viewers, of course, get a deal, and that's an absolutely massive discount off their 2-year subscription. So, go to nordvpn.com/chainbear or use the code CHAINBEAR to claim that humongous saving and VPN all over the shop. And now, back to Spa-Francorchamps. In 2019, following a big accident at the top of Radeon, Antoine Hubert lost his life and Juan Manuel Correa was severely injured. Earlier this year, during the GT 24-hour race, Jack Aitken suffered fractured vertebrae among other injuries after being collected at high speed following a crash at Radeon. The W Series qualifying on Friday featured a 6-car accident with cars all piling into each other, one after the other, at the top of the hill as the rain picked up at the start of their hot laps. The second Formula 3 race saw Amaury Cordeel hit the barrier and then get hit by Callan Williams at the top of Radeon, though at a much lower speed than some of these other incidents. Now, the weekend hadn't been helped by a new bump at Eau Rouge that is likely track deformation after the severe flooding that happened relatively recently. But what these incidents all have in common is that the cars had already had an accident. They'd lost it one way or another through the Eau Rouge sequence, they'd hit the barrier hard, and then they got hit again by another car going flat out through this very fast bit of track. And that's what makes this all particularly nasty. Eau Rouge through Radeon is a fast sequence that begins the flat-out run all the way from La Source to the L'Écume chicane 2 kilometers down the road. Getting Eau Rouge right and committing through it is vital as it dictates your speed all the way down the Kemmel Straight and can save you bundles of time and either set you up for or protect you from a potential overtake. But here comes Sebastian Vettel, right? You know how it goes. Because the run through Radeon takes the car quickly from a steep uphill climb to a flat track, the car actually goes light as it crests the top, similar to actually losing a bunch of downforce as the car is lifted very slightly from the tarmac and ends up slightly more skittish. The dramatic crest also makes the run through Radeon blind. If there's anything lurking on the other side, drivers won't see it until they get there, increasing the chance of them hitting an already crashed car or lingering debris. And to top it all, there's very little runoff around this whole high-speed section. So it's easy for a car to lose it for whatever reason, hit a barrier and either bounce back across the active racetrack or be left stranded in the firing line if anyone else happens to take the corner wrong, or, as can often happen on opening laps, cars end up all spread out all over the place to avoid incidents or each other. And Spa is one of the wetter tracks we go to. There's very often rain through at least part of the weekend, increasing the odds of an error through the section that puts their cars on edge. So let's talk about the dangers of secondary impacts, as that's our real concern here. Most drivers haven't been put in too much danger from just hitting the barrier alone, despite how high speed some of the impacts have been and how short the runoffs are. Lando Norris hit the left-hand side of Radeon hard while pushing in the wet during qualifying and rebounded across the track and almost all the way down the opposite runoff area if you want an idea of how fast he was going. Now, I didn't include this accident in my list earlier because he was all on his own with no secondary impact. But he too went right across the blind bit of track and was frankly lucky no one else was around, especially with the added spray and slippery tarmac. The problem with secondary impacts is the crash structures of the car are designed to work once. They take all the energy from an impact and they transform it into braking, deforming, or ejecting the outer parts of the car to stop that energy essentially getting to the driver and doing them injury. So if you hit a barrier and use up part of the work of your crash structure and then get hit again, there is much less to protect you, especially if the same part of the car takes the hit. It's a limited use shield. So Eau Rouge itself, a name I'll continue to use casually for this whole sequence of corners as is understood, is actually not much of a challenge for drivers anymore, particularly in F1 and particularly in the dry. Most drivers will tell you that. It's basically flat out without much of a second thought, rather than a corner you'd have to work up to through practice every weekend before you'd feel confident pushing the car completely through it, as it used to be. And that's fine, it happens. Cars will inevitably change over time and their relationships with different corners will change too. Daredevil corners will lose their edge and other corners might offer new challenges. But it is still a thrill and a fan favourite, and nailing it is a key part of the lap, especially in battle. So if we were to straighten it out, or bung a chicane in there to slow it down, well, people would flip out. New to Eau Rouge? The nerve. But if it's to save life and limb, is it something we need to consider? Let's face it, iconic Daredevil corners have been chopped before. In 1994, after the deaths of Senna and Ratzenberger at Imola, that circuit was dramatically altered to add chicanes at its challenging high-speed corners to slow the cars down and save them from the very limited runoffs. That was one of the key enough is enough years. Circuits all over the calendar were given modifications in the same manner, some of them in extremely screw it that'll do ways, while longer term decisions were being pulled together. In 1994, even Spa temporarily altered Eau Rouge, shoving in a chicane while wider modifications were made to the surrounding area to make that classic corner safe to plough through again. In fact, the current short layout of Spa was born out of boycotts and protests on safety grounds. The old 14-kilometre danger run through the Ardennes was chopped down into a more reasonable, safer circuit we know today. Just like the Nordschleife was abandoned by F1 in favour of the modern Nürburgring Grand Prix track. In 2005, of course, 7 teams famously pulled out of the US Grand Prix over safety concerns at a single corner. Granted, in this case the inadequate tyres were the reason for the risk, but years down the line even that road course has been altered to remove the full run through the banking. So iconic corners and even entire circuits can be changed, abandoned or torn up no matter how popular they are. It has happened before, and it can easily happen again. Eau Rouge and Raidillon aren't immune from all that, and we know how F1 currently needs very little excuse to turn its back on the poorer, old-school European circuits in favour of glitzy new circuits in a place that will throw money at them and attract the VIPest of guests. So at the top of this video I asked if Eau Rouge should be changed, and I answered myself, because there's no one else here, with both yes and no. And I said yes because, all the risk I just mentioned, the death and the injury and stuff that hangs over this corner like a spectre, especially in the wet. But also, no, because we don't need to change this bit. The actual track where they drive as defined by the white lines. This bit is still fine. Which is good, because you can still have the flat-out, stomach-churning ride without neutering it for the drivers or the fans. But these bits are the problem. As I said, the runoffs are very narrow and practically encourage cars to rebound into the firing line of oncoming, flat-out, unsighted traffic. The left side in particular, by the nature of its limited area, actually coaxes cars back onto the circuit like a funnel. It's an absolute danger. I'd previously spoken about the difficulties involved in dealing with this, as to the right-hand side of Raidillon is a steep drop, and the left-hand side of the track is a steep climb. The track here is, after all, cut into the side of a hill. So to increase the runoff thoroughly, you'll need to do some serious and expensive landscaping to raise a huge amount of land on this side and hack away a big chunk of it on the other. But they are actually doing just that. Well, some of it. As part of an €80 million transformation, which is mainly for commercial reasons, adding more grandstands, making the track suitable for other series, they will be opening up the runoff on the inside of Raidillon to essentially straight line the barrier so it doesn't feed crashed cars back onto the track so easily. It'll also be adding gravel traps at La Source, Blanchimont, Lecumbe, Stavelot, and yes, Raidillon itself, though the exact details are as yet unrevealed. Now, gravel traps are interesting. Eau Rouge did used to have gravel traps as its runoff before the now common long tarmac runoff. Now, some ex-drivers have suggested putting gravel traps down there again to psychologically slow the drivers down. The thing about tarmac runoffs is there is a lack of penalty for running wide. You push a bit too hard and exceed track limits and you just keep going. No problem, no penalty. A gravel trap will mess you up. If you run wide on a gravel trap, you'll at least be slowed down. You might also lose control, spin, damage the underside of the car, muck up your tyres, or even get completely beached and retire. You don't want to run wide onto a gravel trap, and if drivers know that, then maybe they'll have to be more considered through Eau Rouge. That doesn't mean not going flat out, but perhaps measuring the risk and not taking the piss. Which is good in theory, but I don't know if I'm convinced that would do as much as, well, we've seen Grand Prix drivers. In the reward-risk balance of things, they'll always greedily favour reward and push things too far if they think they need to. Now, gravel traps will potentially slow down some accidents, but also at the risk of flipping the cars or skittering them out of control, so there is a balance here in their design. In terms of the right-hand side of Raidillon, I don't believe there's anything major in the works there. For now, anyway. Hubert and Correa's accident happened on this side, of course, but for the most part, the left-hand side is the bigger concern. Now, gravel here between the track and the second pit lane will discourage this as a flat-out escape area, but will also create a risky speed difference between anyone caught out in the gravel trap versus those coming over a blind crest. So careful decisions have to be made in everything. And finally, there is a very weird ongoing conversation about danger being an intrinsic part of the sport, with resistance whenever changes are made to the cars or tracks to reduce acute risks. We do need to talk about it, honestly. It kind of goes along these lines, the drivers know the risks, and if they didn't want to deal with the danger, they should have taken up golf. And also things like, everyone's a snowflake these days and people need to stop being babies. We want to see real risks and real heroes. Now, the first of these is odd because, they still do race. Drivers will complain about what they see as unacceptable safety standards, but they are still out there racing. But it doesn't mean they can't push for better. I don't really get why facing death and serious injuries should be a necessary part of the job. Why can't just being a good driver be the main requirement, and the risk be points losses or damaged cars or retirement? Isn't that enough? I'm not saying anyone can expect complete sanitation. All sports have risk of injury one way or another, but facing death or very serious injury shouldn't be intrinsic to the sport, especially when it's very avoidable and within its power to stop it. A snowflake lark is very silly and honestly an insult people whip out when they don't have anything thoughtful to say, honestly. But I also don't think most fans are here to bay and cheer at the potential for serious accidents. I think most of us are glad we don't live in the 60s where drivers died with alarming frequency and their colleagues were expected to suck it up and shrug it off, or they just weren't made of the right stuff. Even in the last decade or so, we've seen people die or be sidelined by nasty injuries enough, especially if you watch something like IndyCar. And it doesn't get any less horrible with the waiting as ambulances sit on the track and the growing realization that something horrible has happened. Seeing the grieving and shock of drivers, friends, family and colleagues. I mean, just seeing fellow drivers and friends of Antoine Hubert remembering him 2 years on is still tough. And honestly, it's kind of rough seeing people hashtagging for Antoine or Bianchi with apparent respect and sadness and reverence on the one hand, and calling everyone babies and snowflakes with the other for pushing for better safety. Look, either you care or you don't. And I may be weird, but I just don't like people dying for my entertainment. It sucks. And it sucks if there's a big crash and you know the worst is a very real possibility. I don't know if you're a real fan, honestly, if that's what you need to be happy watching. But it is an amazing feeling when so many people walk away from high-energy incidents because the work was done to protect them. Yeah, I'm on a bit of a soapbox here, but it did kind of suck spending the whole Belgian weekend watching accidents keep happening at that same corner and dreading how bad the consequences could be knowing drivers have been asking for changes there. And also there's a whole concerning pattern with the FIA's race direction in general, which feels a lot riskier than it could be. But that is for another time.